Hello everybody and welcome to another Throne and Liberty video. This game is almost out globally now, coming out on the 1st of October with early access starting on the 27th or 26th of September depending on where you live in the world. But the thing is, if you're anything like I was when I first started playing the Korean version of this game, well, you kinda have no idea what class you want to play. You've gone through a million class guides and tier lists, you've seen the gameplay, you've seen PvE, PvP, you've seen it all. I know. And none of them really give you a good enough idea of what you should play. Trust me, I know exactly how you feel, because that's how I felt when I first started playing the Korean version. So I'm gonna try my best to help you out a little bit. The way that I'm gonna do that though is gonna be a little different to the typical class tier lists out there. Instead of just telling you what classes are good, I'm gonna try and teach you how to figure that out on your own. Hopefully, this method will be a little bit more helpful in the long run for you to figure out what class you wanna play. I'll explain more in a second, but for now, consider this video a personality test, except instead of telling you you'd be a good debater but failing to mention that makes you annoying, it'll help you figure out which class to play in Throne and Liberty. For more MMO related content, including guides and reviews, make sure to subscribe to my channel below. Alright, let's get started. Before we talk about the classes themselves though, we need to acknowledge that Throne and Liberty does not actually have a traditional class system. Now if you're already familiar with how this works, feel free to jump ahead in the video. But if you aren't, you should know that in Throne and Liberty, the skills that you have access to depend on the weapons you have equipped. You can equip 2 weapons at any given time, and those pretty much determine your class. And I say class in air quotes. The great thing about this is that you can freely change your weapon combination whenever you'd like, and there's no such thing as a primary or secondary weapon. Both weapons that you've equipped are treated equally, with no penalties for either one. That said though, you do have limited skill slots, but you can choose any mix of skills from either weapon. This means that there is a lot of freedom and creativity to come up with your own build. Metas exist, of course, but you're able to select and freely change to and from any combination of weapons and any combination of skills that you'd like. Plus, since there's no restriction in changing weapon combinations, I actually just recommend shortlisting a few of the combinations, maybe 2 or 3, that look interesting to you from this video and trying them out yourself before you actually settle on one. Okay, so what's this super magic method that I've come up with? Well, it's not really all that super or all that magical, but it's more of a logic-based 3-step process where you make the choices best for you, and at the end, you should have at least one weapon combination that you would like the best. So first, I'm going to describe each weapon individually. I'll tell you what they're good at, and most importantly, I'll tell you what their playstyle is. At that point, I want you to select 1 to 3 weapons that sound the most interesting to you based on their playstyle. Don't go beyond 3. Limit yourself. Even if all of them sound kind of interesting to you, you should try to limit yourself to the 3 most interesting weapons. Then, I'm going to tell you how weapons interact with each other and how their playstyles mix. At that point, I want you to pick weapons to pair with the weapons you picked earlier. Try to pair the weapons you chose with each other first. And if you can't do that, and only if you can't do that, you can pick from the remaining weapons. Again, remember, base your choices around the playstyle of the weapon. And finally, as the final step, which is a bit of a bonus step because I have a secret crush on you, I'll give you a few good and popular pairings between weapons as inspiration. So by the end of that 3-step process, you should have at least one weapon combination that you will absolutely love. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with step 1 and go over the weapons themselves. The first weapon, the Great Sword, is all about very short-ranged area of effect damage. Its skills make you fight up close and personal, and it's got a little bit of mobility for repositioning. The playstyle for this weapon is based around jumping into the middle of a group of enemies and making big, wide swings of your sword, a signature move being to spin with it, to do really good area of effect damage around you. The next weapon, the Sword and Shield, is also about fighting up close and personal, but instead of doing damage, it focuses on being incredibly tanky. In fact, it's actually the tankiest weapon in the game, and you'll rarely have trouble surviving with it. The playstyle for this weapon is to act as a wall between an enemy or even a group of enemies, drawing their attention and taking their hits in the place of your teammates. Then, the Dagger is a high mobility weapon that focuses on damage over time rather than big hits. The damage numbers on hits might look low, but they happen quite fast and add up really quickly. The playstyle for the Dagger is to be very mobile, quickly dashing around enemies, inflicting a lot of strikes that leave them crippled and poisoned. It's pretty much death by 1,000 cuts, but as a result, it's not that great at area of effect damage and really only shines in single target damage, especially against enemies with lots of HP. The fourth weapon, the Longbow, is the weapon with the longest range in Throne and Liberty. While it does have some area of effect damage, it really excels at single target damage, with the focus being more on chaining skills back to back to back to constantly barrage an enemy with arrows. The playstyle for this weapon is to pretty much keep your distance, standing still for most of the fight and continuously chaining arrows onto your target. By itself, this is probably the easiest weapon in the game, but its damage potential is extremely high. Then, the crossbow is a medium range weapon that pretty much has the best single target damage in the game. Now, medium range in this game is still kind of close, but it's definitely not as close as the melee weapons. This weapon is kind of like the dagger in that it's very mobile and focuses on doing a lot of small strikes that add up rather than slow big ones. But the playstyle for this weapon is based even more around constant movement, doing damage while in motion, never letting yourself get caught in enemy attacks. Next, the staff is the main magic weapon in Throne and Liberty, and though the range is a bit shorter than the longbow, this weapon really excels at area of effect damage. The playstyle for this weapon is quite similar to that of the longbow as well, where you stand in the backline doing damage, except instead of being a quick barrage of arrows, it's a much slower but harder hitting barrage of frost, flame, and electricity. The final weapon in Throne and Liberty is the wand. Now this is the only true support weapon in this game, focusing on buffing and healing allies, as well as debuffing enemies. This weapon's supporting abilities are not just good, they're actually amazing, and they can often be literally required for some of the more difficult fights in the game. The playstyle for this weapon is also to stand in the backline, but instead of doing a lot of damage, you're going to be using your skills to support your teammates. This may sound kind of easy, but you should never underestimate the difficulty of playing support classes, because you need to be constantly paying attention to things like cooldowns, status effects, your teammates' health, buff durations, debuff durations, and a lot more. But anyway, that's all of them. Those are the 7 weapons available in Throne and Liberty. Now it's your turn to do your homework for step 1. Pause this video for a moment if you need to, and pick 1 to 3 weapons from the ones that we just talked about that look the most interesting to you. Remember, try not to pick more than 3. I know, I get it. They all kind of sound interesting, but really try and limit it to a maximum of the 3 most interesting weapons. Just, trust me on this for now. Okay, you got it? Alright, let's go to step 2 then. Okay, so step 2. How do these playstyles actually mix? Well, they kind of do and they kind of don't. The biggest and really only thing you need to know is that you actually just don't lose any part of the playstyle of either of the weapons that you use. Let's say you have weapon A with playstyle A and weapon B with playstyle B. No matter what these weapons actually are, they'll never truly mix at all. Instead, you get flashes of both playstyle A and playstyle B come and go during a fight. One moment it'll be playstyle A, then it'll be playstyle B, then A again, and so on. This is actually why some combinations are better than others and why metas exist. For example, a great sword and a sword and shield combination is great because you get both the area of effect from the great sword and the tankiness from the sword and shield, and since they're both melee weapons, there's no contradiction in their playstyles. In contrast, a great sword and a staff sounds really good on paper because, think about it. You get the melee area of effect from the great sword and the ranged area of effect from the staff, right? Well, you do, yeah, for sure, but because one of these is melee and the other is ranged, it can clash quite a bit when you use it. So when you're coming up with a pairing, all you need to do is really ask yourself, do these playstyles contradict at all? Okay, let's try doing that as your homework for step 2. First, try to see if any of the 2 weapons you picked in step 1 match together well without clashing in principle. If none of them match well together, try to match at least one weapon from the remaining list to each of the weapons you picked in step 1. Now I want to be very clear, truth be told, any combination is viable. Any. Even combinations that seem to clash can be used, and they can be used extremely effectively even. It's just that because those clashes exist, you'll have to work around them, so it can be harder to use well than a combination that has no clashes. Okay, go ahead and pause the video if you need to and come up with those pairings. You should have 1 to 3 pairings once you're done. Okay, all done? Awesome. You're actually almost there. In fact, you're so close that you can even stop watching this video right now and go the rest of the way by yourself by trying out the 1 to 3 combinations that you got and picking the one that's best for you. That said, if you're still having a bit of trouble making those pairings, or if you're a little bit indecisive still, we can go on to step 3. Okay, now that step 1 and 2 are done, you should pretty much know how to come up with your own pairings, but maybe you still want a few suggestions for good ones. Fret not, beloved child, I gotcha. Here are a few popular pairings, their combined playstyle, and what kind of player or person would enjoy them the most. The The greatsword has two common pairings. The first is with the sword and shield. This combines the area of effect DPS of the greatsword with the tankiness of the sword and shield. This combination is great for people who like fighting up close and personal with big wide area of effect swings while still being beefy enough to be able to face tank some of those hits. You can sort of imagine this pairing as a 7-foot tall barbarian warrior with a giant sword who makes wide, powerful but slow swings and can just take hits all day. The next pairing is with the dagger. This is much less tanky than with the sword and shield, but much more agile and mobile. This combination is great for people who like the area of effect melee style of the greatsword, but instead of standing around face tanking hits, you want to dash around more as you fight, constantly repositioning. You can imagine this pairing more like how anime battles with massive swords look, where like two skinny teenagers will fight faster than the eye can see. Think Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy or Ichigo from Bleach or something along those lines. Then for the sword and shield, the best pairing is without a doubt the wand. This is actually just straight up one of the most popular pairings in the game because the buffs and self-healing provided by the wand increases your tankiness by a significant amount. In fact, this is the tankiest combination in the entire game, and that makes it perfect for people who want to play in the front lines, leading the charge and taking all the hits, capable of surviving damn near anything. You can imagine this pairing as a shining paladin, a beacon of light clad head to toe in armor that protects their allies and is incredibly hard to knock down. Besides the wand, of course, the sword and shield pairs really well with the greatsword, as we mentioned before. Then, for the longbow, there's actually three popular pairings. The first of these is with the dagger. This combination is a bit of a sneaky one, because the dagger works mostly in the background. It provides loads of mobility so that you can make sure that you're keeping your distance throughout the fight, while still being able to do a bit of damage up close. This combination is great for people who like kiting enemies from a distance without standing still. You can imagine it sort of like Legolas from the Lord of the Rings series, an agile archer who's also capable of fighting up close when necessary. The second pairing for the longbow is the crossbow. This combination works kind of similarly to the dagger in that it's based around kiting, but instead of consistently keeping a big distance, you'd be kiting from the middle distance. This combination is great for people who enjoy kiting but not staying too far away from the action, and for those people who like seeing lots of damage numbers on their screen. You can kind of imagine this like Legolas too, but he's launching multiple arrows at a time while running around. The final pairing for the longbow is the staff. This combination has the longest range in the game and is fantastic for both area of effect and single target damage. This combination is great for people who like standing further away in the action, not kiting, but in the backline, almost standing still while you cast spell after spell and rain arrows down on your enemies in quick succession. If you've ever watched those medieval or fantasy war movies, you can imagine this combination as one of those archers or mages that's standing in the backline just constantly barraging enemy forces with magic and arrows. Moving on, for the crossbow, there are two great pairings. The first of these is with the dagger. This combination has the highest single target DPS in the entire game and is extremely mobile. This combination is great for people who like doing damage while in motion, constantly zipping in and out between short range and medium range while barraging the enemy with a ton of small hits. Imagine this combination more as a skirmisher, where you make a countless number of small hits moving in and out of danger instead of one big hit. The second great pairing for the crossbow is of course the longbow, which we discussed before. Then we have the staff, which also has a few great combinations. The first of these is with the wand. This combination is super similar to the longbow and staff combination, but it focuses much more on area of effect damage than single target damage. This makes it a great choice for people who like standing in the backline while you cast spell after spell, just like with the longbow, but instead of arrows, want to rain down area of effect fire, ice, and lightning. You can imagine the same role as with the longbow, but think more meteors and icicles and chain lightning. Flashier and harder hitting for sure, but also slower and less of a barrage. The second great pairing for the staff is the dagger. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you think that this sounds like it clashes. It kinda does sound like it does, but thanks to the dagger's mobility and ability to create and close space, it's actually a surprisingly good hybrid between long-ranged magic and short-range damage over time. This combination will be great for people who like to cast spells while also being super mobile, weaving in and out of the front line as you do damage in passing. Imagine this sort of as a crazed magic assassin who loves the thrill and danger of a battle, living on the edge, getting just close enough to do damage before retreating beyond the enemy's grasp. Finally, of course, the staff also pairs really well with the longbow, as we've mentioned before. For the final two weapon types, the wand and the dagger, well, their pairings have all kind of been already covered with the other weapons, so we don't need to go over them again. And that's it. Those are the 9 most popular pairings in the game. But really, and I know I keep repeating this, but it's really important, any combination is good as long as it it combines two playstyles that you enjoy. So make sure that you only look at these 9 combinations for inspiration and not as some sort of tier list or gospel. And there you have it. That was my 3-step method to figuring out which weapon combination is best for you in Throne and Liberty. Remember, again, that you can switch out weapons somewhat freely. So when you're just starting out, I do recommend shortlisting a few combinations that you think you'd like and trying them out. Personally, I've been playing Staff Bow in the Korean version, but I think I might give Staff Wand a go in the global release. I'm not the most talented with my fingers, don't take that out of context, so I like classes that are a bit slower paced and further back in the line of fire. Anyway, that's enough from me. What about you? Did the 3-step method help you at all? Which weapon combinations caught your eye? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to start a conversation. Make sure to subscribe to my channel below for MMO related content, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll see you guys next time.